here he come. I said, get ready. And he's going, I mean, just roaring. I mean, he is letting it rip. He is tore up.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Today, I'm joined with the one and only Christian Babcock. How are you doing today, sir?
I think you should never repeat one and only ever again. That's not
You're a dime a dozen or what?
Dude, I sometimes with Lauren, she's like, yeah, I was attracted to you, when we were dating. And obviously when I first saw you, I'm like, so you're attracted to average looking white males, average height. So
nothing special here. You, and then things
exactly, man. Yeah, dude, exactly. So we're here recording this on October 13th. Have you been in the woods during this last heat wave? I've been seeing a lot of Midwesterners talking about a cold front that's has been eluding us here in the South.
Yeah. What's today? The 13th of October. I've been hunting once. So obviously we got back from all the Western stuff. And since then I've been trying to play catch up and honeydews. That way, like late October, that's going to be my time to shine. Or at least my time to sit in the woods. I don't know about shining, but it's going to be my time out in the woods. But what about you?
Your time to double down. Man, I've kind of been in a monitoring stage, sitting back and checking the trail cameras. I podcasted last Friday with Denton, and he was nice enough to leave me with some code blue scents. And so I took those and threw up 2 or 3 new mock scrapes and hung trail cameras over them. I had that mature 11 point with the real short brows. I've been calling him Slick. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 weeks. Went in there in that dry creek, and I cut an oak limb and zip tied it together, threw some of that code blue out and threw a Tacticam on it, and he smashed it first night. And I was like, haha, game is back on. So I've just been throwing up mock scrapes, and in that piece in Southwest Oklahoma, I had obviously the 11 and that new 8 point show up smashing mock scrapes. So it's getting me excited.
Has any of them been daylighting?
Yeah, just that 11 and that 8 point that on the 110. So Carol's pretty excited. He's like, you better get down there and shoot one of those bucks. I'm like, you better get down there and shoot one of those bucks.
Yeah, so, he needs to finish that vendetta with the 11, which when you first sent it, I didn't think that was him.
He got significantly smaller.
Yeah,
he really did, from 5.5 to 6.5. So that was kind of disappointing, especially we had a really, really good rain year. So I don't know. He's definitely not one of those deer that we're going to be like, hey, let's give him one more and see what happens again. Now, the saga with him has been too long. For people that haven't been listening in a long time, I ended up shooting a 7.5-year-old buck while he was standing next to him as a 3-year-old. And ever since then, he's like been hard to see. Like I have never seen him. You've seen him in person a couple of times, but I've never seen him in person since that day. So maybe me and him just have trauma.
So I seen him once, and then Carol seen him like 2 or 3 times. But each time, for some reason, I don't know if it's the wind switch or what, because in that spot, it's really wishy-washy, the wind is. So I don't know if like that's what's been his saving grace, but it wasn't like we just passed him out of the kindness of our hearts.
I haven't been able to kill him is what it is.
Yeah, he just been like eluded. And today, I think we got a guest on that is pretty well known for getting those big mature bucks down. And so maybe we can learn a thing or two off of them. I don't know.
Dude, yeah, 100%. You're going to see when we bring this background in. If you haven't watched the whitetail cribs recently, you're probably living under a rock. But yeah, we got Spook Spann on. Honor for us to have him on the podcast. So let's bring him in and let's pick his brain. What's going on, Spook?
Hey, guys.
How's it going? I mean, it's hard to be in a bad mood when you're sitting in a room like that, I bet.
It awesome. Is. I'm blessed for sure.
Yeah, heck yeah. Well, man, we appreciate you doing this. But I mean, talking in kind of, I guess, that mid-October vein, mock scrapes, and I guess just sitting back and monitoring. What have you been doing right now to kind of locate and get on these big ones?
Yeah, you guys mentioned that. I'm basically doing a lot of the same thing. I'm working on my spots, doing mock scrape rope, putting in rub trees, put in a late food plot. There's a particular piece of property here in Tennessee that there's a really big buck in the area. And I've been trying to get permission for 2 years. I finally got permission on a piece of property that's in a really area. There's several guys, but there were several guys hunting him last year. And he made it through the season, or at least we were 98% sure he made it through the season. I don't have a picture of him. Excuse me. But I've had two people tell me that they for sure saw him here in the last month. So in the same area that he was in last year. Last year he was really visible because he was in a bean field. That particular field was in corn, and so he hasn't been seen near as often. But I've spent a lot of time this past week setting up, put in a blind, a redneck, a food plot, rub tree, scrape ropes, cameras, just went all in all week working on that spot. And then I got a Kansas tag this year. My number one buck got killed already, and but I've got two good backups that are really super deer, and they've kind of disappeared since they. But the Midwest, as you guys know, has had a ton of rain this year, and there's more. Everything's greener than normal. The farmers are getting their crops out later. So I think it's almost every person I'm talking to, especially in Kansas, is just not seeing much right now. And I think once we have a hard frost, the farmers get their crops off. I think it's just going to explode. I'm kind of like you guys. I think the end is just going to start getting crazy.
It was a weird late summer because we usually get a bunch of bucks in velvet. Like you can bait down here in Oklahoma and Texas, obviously. So you'll have some like centralized feeder locations, at least just to get some inventory. And it felt like for 6 weeks, the last 6 weeks of summer, you just couldn't get a buck on camera at all. Yeah. I'm like, dang, is everything dead? And then we get one little just slight cold snap and then smash and scrapes again. Like every buck you hadn't seen for the last 2 months. You're like, there he is. He's alive.
Yeah. Almost every contact, buddy, friend that I've got in Kansas, Oklahoma, are all saying the exact same thing. They're getting less pictures of bucks, and I think it's just a matter of time. Just like I said, need a couple good frosts to knock out all the greenery, and the farmers get the crops out, and I think it's going to bust wide open.
Man, it's an exciting time. Yeah. We're kind of in that period where you're hiking up the hill, right? And the best is still yet to come, but
absolutely
here pretty soon we're going to break loose. So, I mean, are you hunting a bunch in mid-October or kind of transitioning into late October over scrapes, or are you hunting what's your strategy in this time of the season?
Yes. Yeah, so most of the time I'm hunting afternoons and food plots. So generally I work really hard. I always have ever since I was a kid. I started doing food plots in 1970 something, before anybody heard of a food plot. And I came out the very first day I ever went bow hunting. I was 13, and I came out early to go to a wild dinner with my parents. And when I came out, they were in our garden eating peas. And I snuck up on her, and I looked over in the corner, and there was a big buck in the corner of the garden eating peas. And just being a typical unexperienced kid, I messed it all up. And she saw me and blew and took off about the time I drew my bow, and I shot right behind the buck. But what I learned that day is I was like, here I am back in the woods. It's early season, opening day, and the deer out here eating peas out of our garden. And so from then on, I called them pea patches. I used to plant peas, clover, and wheat in my plots back in those days, and so I grew up my dad owned a lumber company and a sawmill, so I had access to cedar lumber, and I would build my stands in the trees, and I might put 3 stands around one food plot for different wind directions, and I would take a measuring tape and tape all my distances and paint on all the trees with black spray paint the distances. Shooting, I shot instinctive for a while, and then I started shooting fingers, and then I started shooting release, but we didn't have range finders or anything back then. No trail cameras, obviously. And I had I was killing deer as a teenager way more than anybody else around. Grown-ups, guys had been hunting their whole life, and they were just astonished, and it was all because of food plots. So a lot of what I do is based on hunting food sources. And then I like to incorporate the scrapes and the different things around the area. And sometimes you'll get in a situation where you've got deer coming, you got no daylight pictures of a really big one getting there early. So you may have to back off in the woods, 200 or 300 yards to catch him before he gets there. More than likely, he's staging back there and wait until it gets dark. But my philosophy's been, if you don't overhunt it and you hunt it properly and hunt it on the right moon days, the right weather days, and don't pressure them in the mornings when they're on feed patterns, I think you'll get. I've always had really good luck getting good opportunities in the afternoon.
Do you use mock scrapes and stuff like that for just camera inventory, or do you typically try to hunt over them like near the food plot, or how do you go about that?
All the above. I mean, mainly what I'm trying to do with any place that I'm fixing up like that is for lack of a better term, I'm setting up the community center. I want to put as much as I can around there just to create activity. And then just let them get as comfortable as possible with that over a year's period of time, and hopefully you have that spot to hunt for several years. But I like the scrapes, the mock scrapes for the inventory. I like for it to create activity, and so all of the above.
Yeah, this time of the year it's hard too, because you wait, you shoot your bow, you do all the work, and you're sitting here and it's hunting season. You kind of feel bad for sitting back on the sidelines. And
I used to, but you'll get out of that, I promise.
Well, I want to, I want to go hunting so bad, and then I talk myself into it. I'm like, look, man, it's a good east wind. Like, I can go hunt this, and then I go out there and it's light and variable, and it's blowing 4 different directions, and I'm like, why am I wasting my time?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a like you said, you'll kind of grow into it. That's a discipline that somebody who's been hunting a long, long period of time starts to, hunting harder doesn't mean you're hunting smarter, I guess.
Exactly. I actually hunt less now than I ever have. And usually, I mean, you're not going to, everything's not going to come together on every deer every year. It's just regardless of how much or how little you hunt. Yeah, I think it's more important just those good days, the days when the moon's right and when the weather's right. And now, obviously, I'm excluding the rut. Anytime I talk about something like this, I'm not talking about the rut. And I think that red moon, I've killed a lot of really good deer on that red moon in October. And so it is, if I'm on a buck and he's coming in, say at night, 3 or 4 times a week, I'm usually going to kill him on one or two of those afternoons in that time period. I mean, it's amazing. And the only reason I might not is if it's super hot. But if the weather's decent, it's the craziest thing. And I mean, you can almost anybody that that is associated with hunting or success during that time. Like I've got a few buddies that operate management areas, public hunting, and he said you can mark it every year. It can be dead as a doornail, and those 2 afternoons, there'll be 5 to 10 to 15 bucks killed in those 2 afternoons when it's been deader than a hammer before, and it'll be deader than a hammer again afterwards. And now, obviously, there are things you can have a cold front come through that'll pelt things up for a couple of days. You could have, I love those misty, rainy afternoons, those real dreary, rainy afternoons. I love those. You get a 1 or 2 of those. I love those. And so you can get a weather condition that can, make it good to hunt, but so many times in October, it's sunny and 80, 85, unless I've got him on a string and he's like daylight and super regular and the wind's perfect, I'm not even going to go.
Is there any correlation with? I know you said that that red moon.
Mhm.
Is there any correlations with that and cold fronts, or agnostic of the cold front? Like nothing has to change in the weather itself. Only that moon has to change for them to get up and move, or are those two correlated? I'm not super versed on the moon stuff.
Well, the red moon, they're going to move. They're going to move on the red moon. Now, the hotter it is, the less they will, and the closer it'll be to dark. But if it hits, and it's funny. I've had it hit several times. When it hits with a little front come through and the temperature just drop, even if it's just a few degrees, humidity drops. Maybe you do get a misty, rainy. Oh my gosh, it's money if it correlates with a front moving through. They're going to move more than normal, even if it's warm. But it's still not going to be as good if it's hot. If it's 85, I mean it's still better than the other days were without the red moon, and there's still a good chance he will move. If it's 65, you can just put money on it. It's just, I mean, it's going to be. It's happened so many times, so many times.
That's when you slide all your chips in. You're like all in.
I've called my shots a lot of times on those days, and my cameraman just go, "Man, what? How?" And I was like, "All the stars align. This buck's been showing up periodically." We had a buck it's been about 12 years ago here locally, and he survived EHD the year before. I had one buck the year before that got killed by EHD that would have been probably the new state record typical. And he died in that EHD. This buck, out of all the bucks I had on camera that year, this was the only mature buck that survived that year. And the next year we hadn't had anything on camera. And I was actually at Milk River hunting with Realtree. And my cameraman called and he said, "Dude, we got a big one at the such and such plot." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yes." And so I got home from my trip. It was hot in the 80s. And just so happened mid-October, right on the red moon, we had a front move through, and it was just super overcast, misty, just a little like just a heavy fog, almost mist. And I called. I said, "We're going today. Today's the day." He lived close to me, and he's like, "You think so?" And I was like, "Yes, today is the day." And we got in the stand. We said that we didn't see. So another thing that really affects all these things that I'm talking about tremendously, especially here in Tennessee and in places where you have oaks, are the acorn crop. So that particular year we had a big acorn crop. So we weren't getting pictures of deer in and around the food plots, which is kind of what's going on as we speak right now in Tennessee also. And but what'll happen is those acorns are so acidic that the deer they'll gorge on them for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like, man, we got to have some salad. It's like they will make an appearance at the food plot occasionally, because I personally, it's just been my own observation that after 2 or 3 weeks of gorging on acorns, they'll come to the food plot a little bit just to get something green. And sure enough, I mean, right before dark, it's getting late. I said, "There he is," and he pops out in the plot. The only deer we saw that afternoon is a 7.5-year-old, 160-inch Tennessee buck. And he walks right up there, and I smoked him, and he's like, "What? Why did you ever think we don't have a single daylight picture of that deer?" I said, "The red moon in this front. The timing was. I mean, this is what it is. We didn't see it. Normally you can always go to that plot and see a doe and a fawn and a spike, or something. A 1.5-year-old buck. Didn't see a single deer except for him."
That's wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just happened. I could sit here and tell you 20 similar stories of that red moon where it's just been, and I've talked to Mark and Terry Drury about it through the years a lot. And they're the same way. You know, it's just like we're always going to be, just like I tell people, like this Tennessee buck that I'm after, I haven't gotten a picture of him yet. And even if I don't get a picture of him, we got some two or three really good moon days here at the end of October around Halloween. I'm going to go hunt those 2 or 3 afternoons just on the chance that he's going to step out that evening, because I feel that strongly about that timing according to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when did you first, I guess, put the pieces together about the red moon? Like, is that something you were taught from like a young age, or did you kind of learn that on down the road?
Not really. You know, it's probably been, that's a great question that nobody's asked me, and then I'm not going to do a very good job of answering it because I really don't remember. I remember having conversations. So here's where it probably came from. I'm really good friends with Dr. Grant Woods, and we've been friends for a long time. We met back in '85, and at the first ever QDMA meeting in the state of Tennessee, we sat on the tailgate and talked till midnight, much to my wife's dismay. And it was it became instant great friends, because I love his, the scientific techie side of learning about deer, and then I knew my redneck things that I had learned through the years, and then when we put those together, I felt like Grant was the ultimate professional and knowledgeable when it came to what deer like and different things about the biology of it. And then I felt like that I was very experienced as a hunter, and when we combined those, I felt like we taught each other a lot over the years. And so I know we've had discussions about the moon, and I'm pretty sure thinking back, that that's where it all started, was with him. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, the moon stuff. I've been talking to a buddy recently, and I feel like cameras and stuff keep a lot of people out of the woods. But when you have that experience, like you're saying, where you can you're creating your own algorithm through your experience, where you're like, I see these predictive factors, and there always has to be a first time that he shows up, right? But what I feel like a lot of people wait for is like, oh, he showed up, now I'm going to start hunting him. It's like, that was that first time,
Yeah. That's I think that's one of the mistakes that you can make. Like, I think especially if you're getting the buck on camera at night, and he's making an occasional appearance, so he's there in the area, and then you want to be sure and go then. But then even if you don't have anything necessarily going in your favor like you really would like, that you're excited about, but there's a buck, there's a buck in the area, you just can't figure out what's happened to him. I still think that that's a good time to go, because we're wanting to go anyways, like we just discussed. We're dying to get in the woods. So if the moon's right and the weather's right, then I'm going to go and hope for the best. But most of the time, I've got a good idea that he's in the area, and there's a good chance he's going to show up. He might show up on somebody else's. Somebody else a half a mile away may have the same thing and have him on their camera, and he may show up on their spot, but he's gonna be on his feet.
Right. Yeah. I like that. So we kind of talked a little bit, or alluded a little bit to it in the beginning. I'd like to kind of walk through, kind of a little bit of your upbringing, kind of your journey through this. I don't even want to call it a sport or a hobby. It's really a way of life. Can you talk a little more about kind of how you got involved in all this? You said that your dad owned a lumber company, so you grew up in Tennessee. Can you give us a little more color into kind of your hunting upbringing, how you got into this?
So everybody always asks me how I got my name. I was born on Halloween night, so that's where the name came from. And my dad was a hunter and a fisherman. He loved to bass fish. We always had bird dogs. My dad did a lot of quail hunting. He did a little bit of deer hunting. He would come home with the deer. I would be so excited, wanting to get my picture made. My first picture I ever had made with the deer, I think I was 18 months old. on the
Oh, that's
tailgate of Dad's old truck. And, you know, I always wanted, I couldn't wait to go dove hunting, fishing. You know, it was just, I don't know. Of course, you got to understand, guys. I mean, this is back in a time in the 60s when, you know, you had 2 or 3 channels on TV and a radio, and that's it, you know, and we played sports. I mean, I love sports. I played all the sports, football, baseball, basketball, played football, just loved it up until a certain point. I fell in love with basketball, ended up getting a scholarship and playing in college, which was awesome. But my hunting passion stayed with me, even though during those school years, athletics were more important at the time. I still went hunting every chance I got. And I let a couple of big bucks get away when I was, you know, like 13, 14, 15. And it really, really just pissed me off. You know, I just got so mad about it because I knew that it was my fault. I put myself in a position to be successful, and then I blew it in some way, you know. But when I was, I killed a big one when I was 16, and I killed a big one when I was 17. And I started figuring out a few things. And like I said, I was doing the food plots, and I was fortunate enough to grow up where, you know, we had the sawmill and the lumber company, and we had a bulldozer, and we had a tractor and a bush hog and a disc. And so by the time I was 16, I was building my own food plots with a D5 Caterpillar dozer, you know. And my dad, we had 800 acres there that I grew up on. And Dad would go out there for something, and he'd go, when did you put this in? I was like, oh, you were gone fishing one Saturday. You know, I figured it was better to ask for forgiveness than permission. I just did what I wanted to do, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, experimented. You know, my buddies used to say, hey, will you the first ever trail camera that ever came out, I saw it advertised in North American Whitetail. And you know, Dick Idle was kind of my idol back in those days, you know. I wrote a big long thing to Cody not long ago telling him how, you know, his dad was really my number one inspiration for, you know, wanting to become the number one, you know, giant buck hunter in the history of you know, North America. And it really was, you know, I got all his magazines and all that. I was just obsessed with it from a very young age. And then when I got out of college, you know, I took it to a whole nother level. I mean, I got super serious about finding better places. I found a place in Western Kentucky to hunt, and Southern Illinois, and you know, I started honing in on places that had, you know, that Midwestern genetic of bigger, and started studying places where people were killing bigger bucks. And Kentucky was my closest place that I could go. And another thing, Fort Campbell Army Base had some really big bucks. So I started hunting it some, and just you know, was super into it. And then my dad kind of got into it too, because he wanted to go with me. So we fished less, and the quail hunting kind of disappeared because living outside of Nashville, the habitat kind of disappeared. You know, it got harder. We just didn't have the number of quail that we had anymore. So he kind of stopped doing that and just started deer hunting with me. And we hunted a lot of public hunting, Land Between the Lakes, Cheatham Wildlife, Oak Ridge, Shelby Forest, different places around Tennessee. And so I cut my teeth on hunting just, you know, the ground that we had at home, and then on public hunting. And was always, you know, when I was 13, I killed the biggest buck one year that was killed on an 18,000 acre public hunting area in Cheatham County. And I never seen so many old men so upset. I mean, you broke their heart. A 13 or 14-year-old kid comes in with this big buck. I mean, they were just sick. But I scouted, and I told my dad some places I looked at I wanted to go look at, and I found a place where that these ridges all came together, and it was real steep, and these deer were crossing over it, and it was just a perfect little funnel. So at 14, I'd already figured out you know, and I learned, admittingly, I learned a lot of that kind of stuff from my dad. My dad, we'd go look at timber and look at land, and I'd go with Dad, and I'd see rubs and scrapes, and I'd ask him questions, and Dad was a very good hunter. I mean, he, even though deer hunting wasn't his number one passion, he was still really good at it, and a good woodsman, a good shot, and so I learned obviously a lot of those things from him. And then as you know, life progressed, I was watching Night and Hail, and you know, reading the stories from Dick Idle and people like that, and just you know, my passion was just bursting out of my ears. And then I had a mutual friend that hooked me up with a couple of guys that had been in the television industry and that had worked for several of the big names, and they wanted to start a show, and we, long story short, came together as partners, and we started doing TV. And at that, all during these years now, I'm trying to get, you know, figure out what I want to do. Is, you know, I wanted to, I thought how awesome it would be to film and get your hunts on film, just so you could look at them for the rest of your life. And didn't know how I was going to make it happen, but just kept working at it. And during this time also, my business was growing. I had been working at the lumber company for my dad, and I started buying land and timber and cutting the timber and selling the land. And we basically got into real estate. And so I was making, you know, a little bit of extra money so I could go on some hunts. So I went to, you know, Saskatchewan on a deer hunt. I started mule deer hunting some in Utah with bucks and bulls, and you know, started going to Kansas. And then first 2 or 3 years that I went to Kansas, I killed a big one with a gun. And then I started bow hunting and bought some of my own land. And then that's when I killed that. I had already been doing, so I was doing TV for 2 years with these two guys. We had a show back. This was before Sportsman, before Outdoor Channel. It was called the Man Channel. You guys probably aren't even old enough to know or remember anything about it.
No, they wouldn't let me buy a subscription on that thing. Not man enough.
And then I killed that. We ended up, you know, kind of parting ways. I kind of wanted to do my own thing with marketing my hunting properties. And then I killed the Kansas giant off the ground that was on the cover of Monster Bucks and North American Whitetail magazine. And then that kind of just like catapulted my career into to a whole nother level. And everybody, you know, with that hunt, everybody saw, I got so excited, and everybody, you know, kind of gravitated to the passion and the excitement. And from there on, it just kind of that, and that also fueled my fire to really just only start chasing really big bucks. You know, by that time I had killed a lot of 150 to 170 bucks. And so I was, you know, ready to step up. And I had told my cameraman one time I would never pass up a booner. And that very year I passed up 2. The whole time he's cussing me while he was a retired 9-year Ranger sniper, and he's sitting there cussing me. You told me you would never pass up a booner, you know. And I said, yeah, but I didn't know I wasn't taking to account when I said that there was a 200 here, you know. And so just kept you know, honing in on strategies and finding. I never dreamed in a million years that I would ever see the day when, you know, people would call me and tell me about a big buck somewhere. And then, you know, I'd either go try to get permission or lease something or figure out a way to get access to it, which kind of happened on its own, not by plan. My strategy was to own a piece of property in each state that I thought I could kill in 4 or 5 different states in a really good area, so that I maybe would have one giant to hunt each year on one of those properties. And then ended up just creating this enormous network of friends and contacts all over North America, where I find out about a lot of big bucks now, more than people even believe or can imagine that I know about. I know about a lot. A lot of them I don't get access to. Several of them somebody else will kill. My number one hit list buck has already been killed this year by somebody else.
It's a
And
great
so,
start to the year.
what's that? Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that's going to happen sometimes. And,
Yeah.
and we can't kill them all, and don't have time to access them all. You just got to hone in on the ones you feel like you have the best opportunity. But that's just a quick rundown, even though that's kind of long. There's obviously a lot of fill in the blank stuff. I love the big game hunt also, and so I was doing a lot of that in the course of all that sheep hunting, and I love the mule deer hunt, elk hunt, and so all the stuff that we all like and dream of doing. Been to Africa 4 times, and so all that kind of stuff I love to do. But hunting big whitetails is for sure my favorite of all.
Yeah, I like there in the beginning when you're talking about all the, the old men when you were hunting 13, 14 years old and shot a really nice buck. But I think one thing that is worth mentioning there is like, this is a time before Onyx and Spartan Forge and everything else. And that's kind of how we grew up a little bit hunting, in the mountains and stuff. You not even really looking at a piece of paper. Your first way in is, you can really go as far in as you can remember how to get out. Right. And
It
I've
ain't
got
very
lost.
far either, let me tell you.
I've got lost a couple times doing that, but I'm like, gosh dang it, there's something big over this next little ridge. I got to go find it. And that's just like a fun exploratory stage of a deer hunter.
Well, you learn so much about terrain, about how deer move, where they like to travel. Because, like, I've gotten lost a few times also, but you know what? I didn't panic because I knew I was going to come out somewhere, and I just learned. I just spent that time learning the property, and I've hunted. I killed a big buck when I was okay. So I killed this buck in 1985. And the reason I remember some of these dates is because 1985 is the year I got married, and my buddies were all making fun of me. Oh yeah, your hunting's over. You ain't gonna you're tied down. You ain't gonna get to hunt no more. And I killed 4 big ones that year. So it was, I guess it was God's way of telling them to shut up. But I was on LBL, which is a big public hunting area there in northern Tennessee and southern Kentucky, and it was raining, and it was November the 1st, and middle of the day, my dad said, where are you going to go? And I said, I got a place I want to put you. And I had learned this area a little bit on the juvenile hunts from years prior, hunting in the area. And you had to walk a long ways. And I had a summit stand. I put it on my back. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm just going to walk till I find something I like. I said, I don't know where I'm going to be. I said, don't panic if you don't see me for an hour or two after dark. I said, just hold tight and I will see you when I see you. He's like, okay, it's just like, I don't know that I would allow my son. I would just say, if it was my son, I'd just say, hey, I'll just go with you. And when we figure it out, you put up, and then I'll know where you're at, and then I'll go somewhere off to the side myself, But Dad, he's just like, okay, And I did. I just walked, and I found a spot where a little saddle with a bunch of cedars, and there was 2 hardwood points running off to it, and there was 3 or 4 old rubs and a couple of scrapes, and it was rained on. It was raining. I mean, it was raining, not just misty rain. It was rain, steady rain. But I saw a bunch of tracks around 2 of the white oaks where deer had been feeding right there. So I just climbed a white oak. I just climbed a tree right there. I said, this is it. This spot is, it's secluded. It's back away from everything. It's a little natural travel corridor. It's a little cedar thicket. There's white oaks here. There's obviously deer eating acorns. November 1st, pre-rut. This is the spot. I climbed a tree, sat there 45 minutes, had a big 11 point, walk right like 5 yards. I shot him quartering to me right where his shoulder meets his neck. He made a little hook about 10 yards and fell dead. One of the biggest bucks killed there that year. And I'd been in the stand 45 minutes. And everybody's like, oh, that's luck. Well, it is some luck, but also part of it is knowing what you're looking for. I mean, when I saw that little spot right there, I was like, this is a spot I can kill a deer. I can kill a buck here on public hunting in this spot right here every year for the rest of my life if I want to come up here and hunt. It was that kind of spot, and I knew it immediately when I saw it that was, it was that kind of spot. And so I think just having the woodsmanship, learning those kind of things, spending those days and hours with my dad, walking around looking at timber and learning about the woods and hunting and different things like that. It just taught me things that you might not learn as easy now with all the technology that we have. But then when I transitioned over into trail cameras and Onyx and all these things that we have now, along with the knowledge that I gained through those years, and you put that together, plus having a friend like Grant Woods for 40 years that's been on a gazillion pieces of property over North America in his lifetime, then you put together an amount of knowledge that is hard to attain because of the era that I grew up in. Because you guys, you didn't grow up in that era, even though now your situation around you, like you said, growing up in the mountains, and you had to learn some things on your own. That's very helpful. And technology is awesome, but when you combine that with just self-learned woodsmanship with the technology, I think it takes you to another level that some people probably don't realize.
Well, it's so simplistic too. Like it's like, well, how do you learn the woods? You spend time in the woods. And now it's like instead of that being the prescription for like, hey, I'm not having a ton of success, I'm not seeing a ton of deer. It's like, well, let me find you a product. Here's a product you need. Here's something, you actually need this. And oh, here's a bow that you need. It's like, hey, here's my problem. I'm not seeing deer. I'm not even getting to shoot arrows. Like that's not, I don't need a new bow. So it is like a different era where it's like, well, have you e-scouted hard enough? Have you hit the LiDAR hard enough? It's like, dude, you burn some of that tread off that boot leather. I guarantee you're going to get way more ROI on that than you are shoving more stuff in your face,
And admittingly, if you're blessed enough to have properties that you get to hunt over a long period of time, once you kind of figure it out after 2 or 3 years of scouting and walking, it becomes so much easier, because then you kind of know where to put the trail cameras, and you kind of know where you're going to hunt according to the situation, according to what crops are around, according to what the acorn crop's like. I mean, I know what I'm going to do around here. I know what I'm going to do here next year, and I ain't even through this year yet. So you just learn so much. Now, obviously, when you get a new property, there's always going to be things to learn. But like when I do my consulting, when people hire me to come look at their properties and help them decide on things to do to improve it, and they want to send me maps and stuff, and that's all well and good, but I'm like, I had a guy send me a map yesterday, and I looked at it, and I just kind of half-heartedly looked at it. I was like, man, I just want to get there, and I want to see it for myself. And if we can walk it or ride around on it or whatever is available, I'll figure it out in a very short period of time what I would do if I were you to make it better. And that's all I can do is just tell you what I would do. And that's one of those things I kind of specialize in. I've been fortunate enough to have my own properties or my family's properties and work on those and experiment and learn from Grant and other people that I know from years and years and years and years of experience. And I just kind of have always gotten a good feel for what I like to do to make things better. And it's not hard to figure it out. It's some of it can be. It's a lot of hard work getting it to the point where you want to get it, but it's so gratifying. It's fun work, and when you're fixing up your hunt spots, so we it's just something we can't get away from. I love it.
You talked about, kind of shooting some good bucks in Tennessee and stuff as you're walking through your teenage years. You go to college. And so at what point do you or how do you realize like, hey, I'm in Tennessee, there's some good bucks around here, but there's a whole nother world out there of like stepping this bar up and up and up in the Midwest? Or did you kind of already know that world was out there?
Well, I
when did
knew
you get
that
involved in that?
there again, North American Whitetail and Texas Trophy Hunter. So getting those magazines as a kid and reading stories, Dick Idle went everywhere, and when I was a kid, I thought that Texas and Canada was like a whole nother universe when it came to hunting big deer. It was all back then, actually really, believe it or not, nobody even talked about the Midwest hardly.
Really?
It was all about Canada and Texas. And man, I was like, I can't wait. I was just like longing for the day I could go hunt Canada and Texas, especially, especially Canada. But because I just big old giant gnarly bucks, 300-pound field dress with crazy mass. And Canada's not near as good as it used to be. It's just between. I mean, I think it's been somewhat overhunted in a lot of places, and it's been I don't know whether it's winter kills or what, but it just doesn't seem like they kill the amount of giants up there that they used to me. And you would think it would be right the opposite because the Midwest is so good now. It's so good here in the United States that if you've got good places, there's really not even that much reason to go up there and hunt anymore. So you would think there would be less hunting, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like, even though I'm getting ready to go, I found a couple of really big bucks in Canada. I'm super excited about. I'm going to be gone here soon to hunt, and I love it up there, and I've killed a couple, big ones, but I love the Midwest the most.
Yeah. Staying on the same topic of kind of that your younger years, you said
Mhm.
right after college is when you kind of really started to push towards hunting those bigger bucks. Was there a certain hunt or a certain deer that you chased that kind of made you want to just take off on that progression of shooting bigger and bigger deer? Or was it kind of just like that normal progression?
Well, I killed when I was. I think when I was. I think I mentioned earlier when I was in high school, I killed two big ones, and
Hmm.
so that was or big for here. Let's put it that way. And that was a big part of it. And I had let a couple big ones get away, and then and then I was still shooting, some other deer because we had a very lenient uh, quota here. I mean, you could kill a lot of bucks in Tennessee, and so I was still shooting a lot of bucks I shouldn't have been, or I didn't really need to be shooting. But we eat a lot of deer. The guys that work for Dad all ate deer, and were constantly asking for meat. But then when I met Grant in '85, and which I was only 22 then, so it's it hadn't been. I'd just gotten out of college, so it was kind of the transition was really quick. Uh, we started talking about quality deer management and passing deer up and aging deer and food plots and all these things that was going to take us into a whole nother. I'm telling you, so many people got so mad at me talking about it. They just couldn't. It was just that redneck mentality. It was so funny. A lot of my friends, they was like, "Wow, we're not. If it's legal, if it's got a 3-inch spike, we're shooting it." And I said, "Okay, hey, that's fine. You do whatever makes you happy. I'm not going to anymore." And it's kind of like me not being willing to. And my dad, it was really awesome because I was kind of nervous about what my dad would think. And when I went, Dad was like, "I'm all in. Whatever you want to do." He's like, "I love it." He's like, let's do it. He was probably tired of helping me drag and track all the time, but he just didn't want to tell me. But so we did. I mean, at that, at 22, I just decided, I was done shooting, so many deer, and I was just going to focus on the bigger deer. And there again, a lot of that was just from, my experience, and then just reading and watching Dick Idle all the time, and then meeting Grant, and then him, really catapulting my mentality into a more serious mode of, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And then also that same year, I found a place in Western Kentucky to hunt, and went up there and killed a real nice deer, and that helped too, because then I found myself, I was like, okay, I found another spot. I found a spot where I can hunt big deer, and I killed some really big deer in that area over the next few years. And so each time I was doing this, it was just like taking me to a whole nother level. And then when I started hunting Kansas, I killed, the first deer I killed in Kansas with a gun was 169-inch 8-pointer. And so I know, right? And I rattled in 13 bucks that morning, and I shot that deer at straight up and down 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. And so when you do things like that, it should. And so I go back the next year, and that's the year I passed up a booner. I was hunting a 200-inch deer, and I ended up killing a 186 deer. And so then I'm immediately just have fallen head over heels in love with Kansas. Because I just killed two of the biggest deer of my life in 2 consecutive years. And at that time, I was already I loved to bow hunt, was a big bow hunter, but I like to hunt with everything. I like to hunt with a gun, muzzle loader, bow. But then as I was getting in starting to get in the industry at that time, and it was so mentally so bow hunting heavy that I really started focusing on the bow hunting even more, and doing it probably 90% of the time at that time. So
I get what you're saying though too, because it's funny enough. Jake and I haven't shot a lot of big deer, but our PBs literally score the exact same thing. Funny enough, we have 2 deer that score 162 and 6/8, both of us, which is funny. But I get what you're saying on the progression. I don't think we're obviously not there yet. There's too much to taste and see. But once you see one of like that caliber, you're like, man, I want more of these. And I could see how if you step up another level, you're like, now I want these. And, and then you step up another level, you're like, I want these. And I could see how you get there, pretty easily.
Yeah. And it is a progression. It'll take you, a few years to work up that ladder. And listen, I still shoot. I mean, I could go around here and pick up 3 or 4 bucks that I've killed around here in the last 10 years that were 7 years old that are 135s, but they were so much fun because they were old bucks. I was wanting to get them out of the herd, out of the gene pool. But they were so much fun to hunt. My wife's filmed me killing 3 or 4 of the big 6, 7, and 8 pointers around here that were anywhere from, 130 to 145 that were 6, 7, 8 years old. And so I just love to hunt. I love, and one thing I was going to say earlier when you were talking about you felt guilty for sitting around and not hunting, what I like to do too, and I'm planning on doing it here in the next days. I like going to a place that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be hunting a big buck this year or hunting very much, and shoot a couple of does. And for the freezer, just get the feel of put in, I love it. I still like doing that, and so that kind of scene, I feel like that's kind of like, going in the gym. I'm playing ball. I'm going to take 100 shots before I go into the gym. But to me, you shoot a couple of does early in the season, kind of gets you honed in, just going through the progression of drawing your bow, putting the pin on the spot, and letting it fly, So I like to do that early when there's not much going on.
Well, that's the issue though with only shooting, big mature bucks, is like that might only happen a few times a year. And like the Nuge says, I mean, you got to see that mystical flight of the arrow. Shooting deer is freaking fun.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah. And I used to, when I was younger, I used to sneak around, shoot groundhogs and squirrels, and even birds with arrows. Now, I admittingly I don't do that anymore. So, I like to go out and shoot a couple of does. I love son. I'm really into health and fitness, and so I try to eat a lot of venison. My family's really into it. So and we're out. So it's time for me to shoot a couple of does to.
The Hunter's Advantage podcast is brought to you by Out on a Limb Manufacturing. I used to be that guy lugging heavy gear down a steep hill after a big buck and regretting it with every single step. But now I use lightweight and dependable gear from Out on a Limb Manufacturing, and it has made a huge difference in my hunting and allows me to get to those hard to reach places. I do a lot of saddle hunting on public land throughout the fall, and a lot of those walks are 1 to 2 miles deep into the mountains. And in those situations, extra weight is not your friend. There's nothing better than walking through the woods and being able to get in any tree that you want. I've been running the Shakar sticks for a long time now and the Ridge Runner 2.0 platform, and this past year I tried the Flatlander saddle from Out on a Limb as well, and all of that gear is extremely lightweight and comfortable. If you want to support a 100% made in America company, go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA15 for 15% off at checkout. Once again, that is code HNTA15 for 15% off at outonalimbmfg.com. We trust Out on a Limb products for run and gun hunting anywhere in the country, and we hope that you will too.
Yeah, the progression thing is always interesting to me because there's some people you talk to and it's like their mindset never changes around hunting. I don't know if it's a passion thing or what, but there's some people that if it's brown, it's down year after year, no matter what. And then there's some people that, have that, what I call like the natural progression where, at first it's just, I want to get a deer down. And then I want to get, maybe a buck down. Then I want to shoot a lot of bucks. Then I want to shoot a big buck. And then after that, I feel like the bar just keeps raising. And then you have people like Don Higgins that, just if it ain't 200, most of the time he probably just ain't shooting it, which respect to that, man. We're actually going to have him on later today. But something that I get into is like and I think a lot of people struggle with this too, middle of the summer, into the summer, you're like, all right, 150 or nothing, 160 or nothing. Then all of a sudden season goes on. You're like, all right, I'll settle for a 145. And then season goes on and drags on. And it's like, at this point, I'm 4 days into my rutcation here on public land. And if a 125 comes out and he's just working it just right, and he just, that the sunrise is just glistening off of his coat, it's like, I'm going to absolutely swack that dude. And it's just like, to me anymore, it feels like, everybody wants a 160, but as kind of what I'm experiencing right now, it's like the story and like the time behind the hunt kind of and the lead up is almost meaning more to me right now than like the big bucks, probably because I can't really kill big bucks consistently. But what's your view on all that?
So to me too, I don't like to talk about score as much as age, and then a lot of it too is so depends on what you have access to. I would shoot a deer on public hunting, and I have shot deer on public hunting that I wouldn't even pick my binoculars up for if it was on my private land and be tickled to death with it. You see what I'm saying? I would shoot a deer here at home, a 5-6 year old that I wouldn't even pick my binoculars up for in Kansas. So it's all relative to what's going on and what's available to you. How much vacation time? If I was restricted like I used to be, I remember I used to work at the sawmill. I was a lumber inspector for Dad, and I would just say, Lord, just someday give me November. I would just like to be able to hunt 4 weeks of November. Well, now I get to hunt September, October, November, December, and January if I want to, which is awesome. So a lot of it's got to do with how much time you have. If you've got a guy that gets 2 weeks vacation a year, I don't think you should set a limit on what you're holding out for. You're just looking for the best buck you think you can possibly get in a 2-week period, and if you're hunting on public hunting and a 130 walks up or 120 or a 100, I'm tickled to death for you to shoot that. I think if that's what you want, and it's a, last day of your vacation or whatever, smoke him, enjoy the time. I don't ever want people to think that I look down on anybody because they shoot a lesser deer or whatever. That's not what it's about at all. It's just about enjoying the woods, your time, what you have available. Everybody's different. Everybody has different demands on their life, their time, their financial situation, what they have access to. It's everybody's different. So, I'm not going to judge anybody, and I would appreciate it, even though they seem to like to a lot, judge me on what, I'm doing or what they're doing, because we don't know what their situation is or what they're going through. I love it when people like Don Higgins and me and whoever, the Drury's and Lee and Lakowski and those of us who have a lot of time to hunt and have access to really good properties and big deer. That's what we're after. We've gone through the progression of all these other feelings and things that we've experienced. We're old. We're all old for one thing, So that's going to happen, But I also love it. I get pictures all the time of guys, and especially younger guys, who kill smaller bucks, and they're proud of them, and they should be. I always comment or press like or whatever because I'm happy for them. And they're going to progress. I've seen so many kids, progress up from the time they were 10, including my own son, to when they get in their 30s and 40s. They're all on a progression scale. Also, some people progress faster than others because if your father is Don Higgins or Mark and Terry Drury or Lee Lakowski or or one of those guys, then your progression is going to be different. I got my Yeti buddy out in Texas, Ryan Snyder's son. He's having a hard time holding his son. Ryan's killing 200s every year, and he's having a hard time. His son wants to shoot a big one. He's having to hold him down. He don't want to overdo it too fast, because he's going to burn himself out on big bucks in his 20s if he lets him shoot too much now. And he knows that. That's why he's holding him back. So, yeah, the main thing I want everybody to do is enjoy their time in the outdoors and hunting. You're going to get out of it what you're able to put into it. Some people are just able to put a lot more into it than others. And I've just been blessed enough to progress in, a lot of different areas outside of hunting and be able to spend more time and resources towards, finding really big deer. And so it's just, it's been awesome. I've never dreamed in a million years that what I'm surrounded by right now would ever happen to this extent.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see it from, not to make anybody an idol, because nobody's an idol except for obviously the Lord. But
Right.
I think people assume that like other people's standards have to be their own, right? Like, oh, this person wouldn't appreciate what I shot, even though I got 3 kids and I get to hunt 4 days a year. And it's, I don't know. I think there are a lot of people that put their standards on other people, but I think too, it's so, especially in a social media driven world, you see just a snapshot of someone's life. I see Spook. Oh, he just slammed another 170. Must be nice, but you don't see the progression of I'm working at the lumber mill. I'm doing the real estate stuff on the side. I'm building myself up to outdoor television. It's like you do all the things you have to do until you can do what you want to do. And people don't realize like how long that takes and how that progression actually looks like,
Yeah. It's a long progression, but I'm telling you, man, enjoy every minute of it because life flies by so fast, And when we're dead and gone, none of this is going to matter. Really, what's going to matter is, is what kind of friend were you? What kind of father, husband, and most of all, what kind of Christian you are and were. And so keep life in perspective, because I myself admittingly, you can get caught up in it and allow it to kind of overtake you if you're not careful, and to where that's all that you're thinking about, and you got to be careful not to let that happen. We love it so much that it can get out of hand, and I know that very well. But what's more important is can we be a good example and help people through the course? And I feel like, if anything, the show and the success and hunting big deer has basically been what the Lord has given me as a platform to hopefully set a good example and lead more people to Christ. And this is just the platform He chose to give me to try to get that done. And so, that's the way I try to approach it now. And when I got to the point in my life, that's all a progression also. That didn't happen overnight. That's just something you grow into. And when I got to a point where I wasn't worried about eating a tag anymore or coming home empty handed, where this is what I'm after. And if I don't kill one, I just don't kill one. And when I got to that point where I was okay with that, I started doing so much better. I started having more fun. I started killing bigger animals, and I stopped stressing so much. And I just let I said, I'm not going to let my physical ability or my equipment stand in the way of my success. But if Mother Nature gets in the way, there's nothing I can do about it. And that's just life. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, and you got to stick a raccoon every once in a while when they mess up your hunt. Yeah.
I'm serious. I used to shoot when I was bow hunting. I shot every coon, every fox, every bobcat, every coyote. If it came by, I shot at it. It was just, and it was fun. It was fun. But I used to just beg for a squirrel to show up when it was time for me to get down out of the stand. I'm gonna shoot at the squirrel, And so I wouldn't do that now. I hadn't shot at a squirrel or a coon or anything while I was in the stand hunting in 25, 30 years. I used to do it every time I went when I was young.
I'm telling you, it's fun.
Yeah, it is.
I lost my
Where
train
do
of
you
thought.
guys live? You live?
We're both from Oklahoma, Northeast
Gotcha.
Oklahoma, and then I live in Texas now. I live in Central
Gotcha.
Texas.
And where at in Oklahoma?
Northeast Oklahoma, just like an hour northeast of Tulsa.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I love Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a sleeper state. I try not to talk about it any more than I have to because I don't want any more people going there. But I've killed some really good deer. Of course, I don't know if you know about T-Rex. I killed him in Oklahoma, up in northern Oklahoma, close to the Kansas border. But I've killed some really good deer in Oklahoma. I love it. I've got a lot of friends there now. A lot of friends.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet state. It's a $2 state, which you wouldn't think. A lot of the really good states. I guess Iowa's still a $2 state, but apparently they say through the harvest data that most people don't end up shooting $2, which I guess is a good thing. But Oklahoma, I don't know if you saw it the other day. I don't know if it was National Deer Association or who ended up publishing it, but they said Oklahoma was one of the top states for shooting bucks over 3.5 years old. Like a lot of management minded people. Not where we grew up, but everywhere else.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, I tell you, Oklahoma is on my priority list every year, and I've got a lot of friends there that so even the first year or two that we produced Spook Nation was in Stillwater.
Oh, really?
I did all my opening to my Spook Nation show was done in Stillwater, there around OSU. Those scenes where I'm in the welding shop grinding on the United States metal, that's in OSU's welding and mechanical shop.
That's awesome. We both went to Oklahoma State.
Gotcha. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in Stillwater. Stillwater is maybe my favorite town in the United States. The reason I love it so much is I used to stay at Holiday Inn. I've had 2 or 3 leases right around Stillwater. I could stay at Holiday Inn out there on outskirts of town and get out of bed, eat some oatmeal, and be in the stand in 20 minutes, you know. And it's like you're in the town, and then boom, you're out in the country, you know. And I just loved it. It's just a clean, neat little town. Everybody's so nice. There used to be a little Italian restaurant I used to eat at out there by the mall somewhere past Cavender's. I used to buy boots and stuff at Cavender's there though in Stillwater. I've been all over that area. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sweet area. I did want to talk to you a little bit about the obviously the TV show and kind of progression into outdoor television. How did you get plugged in and all that? And was that ever something, aspirationally you thought about doing? Because you're kind of right there in the genesis period of like it kind of ramping up, right?
Yeah. So I had become friends. It's kind of a long story. I won't go into that part of it with Harold Knight and David Hale. And of course, around here, they were big to us because they were one of the original people that were doing TV. And then, so it was something I wanted to do, didn't know how I was going to get into it. During that time when I was doing, pretty good in business, and I had built a couple subdivisions and was building houses and buying, selling land and timber, I was sheep hunting and mule deer hunting and elk hunting quite a bit. And a friend of mine who did radio had become friends with a couple of guys that had been doing TV. And so they had worked with Mossy Oak, Realtree, Night and Hail, and several of those companies, and knew it very well. And they were looking for a partner for an investment to try to start a new show. And like I said, that was before Pursuit and Outdoor Channel and Sportsman's Channel. And so we met and spent some time with each other and did the deal. And I worked with them. We were producing the show here locally, and we're doing very well. And then I had a direction that I kind of wanted to go with the show that was kind of different than what they wanted to do. I mean, we had great sponsors. We had Swarovski, Benelli, Realtree, Bad Boy Buggies. Those were just some of the ones that I can remember. And during that time, though, I'd also going to shows, ATA, SHOT Show. I had become friends with several guys like Ryan of Siders of Yeti. Ryan walked up to me at ATA one year and introduced himself. He said, "I own a little cooler company. You probably never heard of it, called Yeti." He said, "I love what you do. I love to hunt big bucks." And he said, "I'd like to sponsor you and work with you." We never even heard of Yeti. That's how long ago that was. And then it turned out
everybody has.
Yeah. And I met Kip Folks and Kip's at SHOT Show in Vegas. Kip's one of the owners of Under Armour, and he's got a 10 by 10 booth that he put up himself, and he was in it by himself. And I met him, and we talked, and the next he sent me some clothes. I wore the clothes during hunting season. The next year I went back. I had my family with me. We're in Vegas, and I showed him. He said, "Hey man, how you doing?" And said, "How was your season?" And I just pulled pictures out of my pocket, and every picture I had on the stuff that he had sent me. And he said, "We're having dinner tonight. We're doing it." He became my title sponsor, and I became immediately personal friends, going hunting with them, staying at his house, and becoming, one of their top, I guess, advisory on clothes and boots and stuff for Under Armour. And so, all that just came together kind of accidentally, not really even planning it. But admittingly, when I killed that big buck in 2007, and it was on the cover of North American Whitetail and Monster Buck 16, that was part of what took me to a whole nother level also. Even though I'd killed three 180s on film the year before that we aired, that buck, obviously took it to another level. and
Can
people
you
just
talk a little
saw.
bit about that story? I mean, because it's an awesome piece of footage.
Well, I, I had a good feeling that I was going to kill the deer, and I had told my cameraman, I said, we're dedicating the whole season, especially November and December, to this deer.
I bet
And
he was
so,
jacked up. He's like, nice, I don't get to go home for months.
yeah. And so, so it was, we knew the deer was there. A couple of my friends out there had videoed the deer from time to time. They would ride through the area. One of them was an older gentleman that kept he was probably in his 70s. He kept a camera with him all the time, and he would ride around all the time. And he videoed the buck. He actually videoed the buck on like July the 3rd or something in Velvet, and right where we had pictures of him the year before. And so, we knew he was there the year before. And then when we got, the video footage of him, we went all in on the food plots and just getting ready. And when season rolled around, we got 3 or 4 trail camera pictures of him in mid-October, about this time when we got our first pictures. And then all of a sudden, these gigantic scrapes and rubs started showing up in the area in our, around the food plot. And I had gone to the neighbor to try and get the guy that just bordered me on one side had a big cedar thicket, and I felt like the deer was probably bedding and living in it most of the time and coming out and doing his thing around in the area. And I went to him, was able to lease his place, actually got a contract to purchase it, and actually buying it. But I actually had a governor's tag for Iowa that year that had been given to me by the state of Iowa, and because of the show. And so I had gone to Iowa in the summer, and there again, I scouted. I found a place down in a hollow and I knew there were going to be a bunch of acorns. I had talked to some people, and there's a lot of acorns on the trees, which is not always the case in Iowa, but there was a pretty big block of woods on this particular farm, and went in there and looked at some trees and saw they had acorns on them. And so I found these trails crossing, and there was a big tree with a real old fallen down built stand. And I put a ladder on that big tree. It was too big to even put a lock on it, and put a lock on one of the limbs. And I just felt like I told my cameraman, I said, hey, when we come, we're not going to have a lot of time to hunt. So we're going to hunt a place where we think we can kill a nice buck, within a couple of days. We'll probably come the first week of November and try to get one, on a pre-rut pattern. Sure enough, we got there that morning about an hour before daylight. So we had hunted Kansas for a few days. My buddy had seen the buck, the big Kansas buck, while we were in the stand one morning in a wheat field at 7:30 in the morning eating wheat. But then it turned off really hot. It got up in the 80s, and I said, hey, we're going to go to Iowa let's go to Iowa for a couple of days. The front's going to move through up there first, and then we'll hopefully we can kill a deer within 2 or 3 days, and then we'll shoot back down here. And when this front comes through, then we'll be here for this deer. So we did. We went up there, and I'm pretty sure it was the first morning. It might have been the second morning. There's deer running everywhere before it got daylight. And I saw a big deer come off the ridge and go down, and I could grunt really good on cue with my mouth. I have to practice it more, and it's better if I can even take a swallow of Coke or something, Coca-Cola, to kind of make that
Get a
carbonation.
little carbonation. Yeah.
Carbonation makes my throat, rougher or something. And I grunted, and he stopped and locked up, and I grunted, and he literally walked right on the tree. And I swear his back was this wide. He was like an 8.5-year-old 160 10 pointer. I said, that'll do. And I shot him right down through right down through the back. smoked him. You know, it was awesome. And we did our recovery and all that. And so the front had moved through there and was headed, it was at an angle, and it hadn't quite got to Kansas yet, just starting. So the next morning we drove to Kansas, back to Kansas. And I said, and so we were going, I said, man, we got to have a better place to hunt in the mornings. Cause really my farm that I had was really set up for afternoon hunting. It was hard to get in the morning. Had a lot of CRP grass and cedars, and it was hard to get down into where I wanted to hunt in the mornings. So I said, when we get there this evening, we're going to load up the stands. We're going to take the bad boy buggy, and we're going to go to the back of that wheat field where my buddy had filmed him a few days earlier, and we're going to scout and see if we can find a place that we can slide in the mornings without spooking anything and hunt this deer, because I really wanted to hunt him in the mornings during the rut. And we're in there, and it's like 3:30 in the afternoon, and I saw it, the wind's blowing, that front's moving in, wind's blowing 35 miles an hour out of the west, northwest. And I just look and I see him up on about 300 yards away, crossing a sand hill that just had sage. And I put my binoculars up and I went, oh my gosh. I said, it's him. And he went off that stand, and you could tell he was just mingling around, and he put his head up and sniffed every now and then. He was looking for does, And I just turned around and told my cameraman, I said, let's go kill him. That's exactly what I said. And he went, so there was like a sand ridge and another sand ridge, and he went down in behind them. I just took off running. The wind's in my face. Literally was running as fast as I could dodge plum bushes and whatever, found me a little deer trail, and I'd run on it a little bit. We got up there to a big giant cedar tree and just started creeping in there again. Wind's in our face, everything's in our favor. And I get up in that little pocket of cedar trees, and I'm just looking around, and he's like, oh, we spooked him. I was like, there ain't no way. I was like, with this wind blowing like this, there's no way that a deer knows we're in here. But then all of a sudden I looked and I saw a rack sticking out of the CRP probably 30 yards away. I knew immediately it wasn't him, but it was still, it's like a 155 or 60 inch 8-pointer. It was laying down like 30 yards from us, which just kind of solidified the fact I knew we hadn't spooked anything. And then, all of a sudden I see ears, and there's a doe, and all of a sudden, there's a few deer around, and then that buck gets up and he chases one of the does. And so we're just standing there, and all the while I got my bow in one hand, and I'm just like snipping off. I got my clippers, and I'm just cutting a few cedar limbs just to create a little pocket where I can at least draw my bow without hitting stuff, And all of a sudden there's this big doe. I never forget. She was so big. She's walking by about 50 yards, and she's got her tail stuck out and just crooked. And there's about a 1.5-year-old 6-pointer just right on her. Nose just right on her, and goes right into the little pocket of cedars where I had seen this buck the last time I saw him. This is the area he was in. So, this is probably over a 30-minute period of time this has taken place. Well, that doe and that buck wasn't in that little cedar thicket over 30 seconds. And here he come out of there with his tail tucked between his legs, looking behind him. I said, he's right there. Guarantee you, he's not leaving her. He got run off. He is right there. Sure enough, I saw that doe just kind of mingling and feeding. All of a sudden she wasn't moving much. She was just hanging around that pocket of cedars. And sure enough, I saw his rack, moving in behind her. And, it was so awesome to be able, even though it was extremely nerve wracking and the most nervous I've ever gotten on a deer in my life, I got to watch him for probably 10 minutes at least, and it was just epic. It was just, and I wish we could have gotten all that on camera. My cameraman was that's a lot of pressure on a cameraman You know, when it's your hunt and you mess it up, it's on you. But when it's somebody else's hunt, you're filming or you're doing whatever and you mess it up, that's a lot of pressure.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. And I don't care who you are. And so he was just being extremely, the sniper was coming out of him. He was being extremely cautious not to try to do too much.
You just
Even
look
though,
back and he's in a ghillie and a cedar. That'd be funny.
yeah, I know, right? He's, and he is just, he's waiting for the right moments to move and whatever, where really the buck is like 60 yards away and he's so into her, he ain't paying no attention. We could have been over there doing jumping jacks. He wouldn't have seen us. And finally, the doe comes out. Well, he walks out of that little thicket. And he starts doing a licking branch. So he's making a scrape, licking branch, and he is into it. I knew this was a real aggressive buck because it was the most biggest scrapes and rubs. It's the best buck sign to this day in my hunting career I've ever seen anywhere. In about a 600 or 700 yard circle, you can't imagine how much buck sign there was. It was incredible. I mean, rubs this big as your leg, just shellacked, scrapes as big as your hood of your truck that stunk. I mean, it was just like the most epic deer sign you've ever seen.
Dream scenario.
Yeah, it was. And so she just starts feeding, and then she's actually, I thought about it a million times. My food plot that I had was probably, I don't know, 300-400 yards behind me. I'm sure that trail, she was headed right to the food plot. I feel certain. And I'm just thankful that I carried my bow with me when we were going in there to set in that stand, because I almost didn't take it with me to go put up that stand. And he looked up and he saw she was gone. And I'm telling you, I've never seen a deer panic like that over something other than being spooked by a human being or something. I mean, he just went to look, jerking his head around, and he's looking, and he's sniffing, and he's just like got like helter skelter. And I guess, it'd be like us, and we had a super hot date, right beside us, just super sexy, and all of a sudden you turn around and look, she's gone. You're like, what the heck? That's the way he was. He was freaking out. He just, here he come. I said, get ready. And he's going, I mean, just roaring. I mean, he is letting it rip. He is tore up. Well, that sand ridge we're on the point of had a trail going both ways. Well, she had come to our right at like 6 or 7 yards. And he was so jacked up. I was like, he's going to walk right by. He's going to lose the trail, which is kind of dumb to think because their noses are so awesome. He's not going to lose the trail, but I was afraid he might. So I'm trying to decide which side of the cedar I'm standing beside he's going to go on. And finally he goes, "Rrr." I mean, just super loud. And it's a little bit more to my right. So then I got ready. He comes in the hole right there. And I started to, I had thought about whether I would try to stop him, but my instinct said, he's so close. I'm just going to, and I just put the pin. I remember when I had my bow drawn, and when he come into my sight window, I shoot 8 pins. Every pin was on him at 6 yards, and I remember just fighting to get that 20-yard pin down into the middle of him, and get it down even a little under the middle of him. And I did. And as soon as it did, I turned it loose. And I remember, I mean, so vividly the era. And I saw it wasn't right in the pocket, right behind the shoulder. It was back about probably, 7 or 8 inches in the rib. So right dead center. I mean, I knew it was a dead deer. It's just a matter, is it the back of the lung? Is it liver? It's in that area. He takes 2 or 3 big jumps and he just stops at like 15 yards right in the sunshine and just the most picturesque. I mean, I couldn't have scripted this hunt out any better. And so I got another arrow knock by then. I'm going to try to get another one in him, And he stood there for a second, and when I went to draw my bow, he saw me, and he wheeled and went off the hump. But he's taking these big jumps, and I can tell he's laboring. He's not running like he's trying to get away. He's running like he's like trying to get a breath. And I just go down, and then he just piles up. And so what it allowed me to do, all this, years of hunting and a year of preparation and seeing the video and the trail camera pictures and all the things, all this emotion had reached a pinnacle, then shooting him off the ground and the way it all happened, and then watching him go down. I just threw my bow and started yelling and just, lost my mind. And it was the most epic, outside of, just basically your kids being born and probably being baptized was the most. I mean, but even that, you can't generate that kind of adrenaline. Even hitting the winning shot or hitting the winning home run or whatever, I've never had an adrenaline rush to match that moment, It was just, and then putting my hands on him, and I killed him on my dad's birthday, which was November 14th. And it was just, I've been so blessed. I've killed more stuff than I ever thought, more big bucks than I ever dreamed. I'll never be able to match that hunt again.
I feel like that's something that's like, me and Christian talk about it sometimes. It's like God's thumbprint, where it's like, hey, I'm like, I lined this for you to let you know, like, this is exactly what you should be doing right now.
Yeah. I felt I did, when I had time to, it soak in. And I mean, we skinned the deer the next day, and I wouldn't even leave the rack anywhere. I set it right beside my bed, and my cameraman had a tag. So I was like, heck, we'll just hang out here. I'll carry the camera for a few days. We'll try to get you a deer. I was like, I don't care if I kill another one the rest of the year. I was like, I had a tag I had a farm in Illinois that I was hunting. I was like, and I had a big one there I was hunting, and I was like, I wasn't even worried about it. I wasn't even like thinking about it. I was so happy. But yeah, what that deer did, though, I mean, he catapulted me into, when you're talking about go back to that progression, he catapulted me into a mindset of, this was so amazing that it's kind of like this or nothing now. It's like it's 200 or bust. It's not even like I'm not going to be able to feel this anymore any other way. And so then that's when I went just like all in. And of course, it wasn't even 24 hours. Candy Kiski calls me, and she said, "Hey, I heard about your deer. Did y'all score him?" I said, "Yeah, we scored him like 3 times. He's like 230 and change, between 230 and 233. Yeah," I said, "He's got 3 or 4 points broke," but I said, "Obviously, we can't do anything about that." She's like, "Well, that's going to be the largest whitetail ever shot on video by a bow hunter." And I was like, "No, I had no idea." She's like, "Yeah, it beats Stan Potts." And I was like, "Oh, wow." So she called Bill Jordan, and then later on that evening, David Blanton called, and they wanted to meet at ATA to have it on monster bucks, and so it just kind of, everything just was a whirlwind after that. But it was, yeah, still to this day, I mean, I'm just as proud of him today as I was the day I killed him, and he's right here. I mean, I keep him right here close all the time.
Yeah, you talk about storing up treasures in heaven. You're like, man, I hope I've done enough good down here that's the kind of hunts I get to go on when I'm up there. Imagine how cool those are going to be.
Oh, I know, right? And that's like Phil Robertson said. He's like, there ain't going to be any limits in heaven. And so
200s everywhere.
I always said, and now listen, guys, you will never meet a human being that loves basketball any more than I do. And the only thing I've ever done, I've said this to a lot of people, is they just shake their heads that I like doing that more than hunting is playing ball. But I'm of course at an age now where, not near as good at it as I used to be, but I still love to play. But I've always said, I was like, if being in heaven, and I know it will be better, is anything like being in the zone playing basketball, it's going to be incredible. Because when you get in the zone in basketball, and it's like nothing you can do or no shot you take is a bad shot. They're all going in. It's just like the most priceless moment that an athlete can have. And I'm sure, it's that way for a hitter in baseball or in football. But I never experienced the same zone in those sports as I did in basketball. But then being in that moment on a big whitetail, just that time and the timing and making sure you draw your bow, you make a good judgment on the distance and when to release the arrow and put it in the right spot, and then you get the gratification of that, all that work and time and thought and preparation, and there's the result of it. It's just priceless.
Yeah, it is. So you talk about kind of chasing that high, that one kind of catapulting your hunting career. How long did it take you to get on another 200?
The next year. Man, that's a good question. I'm trying to remember which deer was next. T-Rex was during that time. I'm actually looking around trying to figure out. I killed a big one in Canada, and I killed a big one in somewhere else. But to remember which one was next, I think it was T-Rex. Maybe it was 2 years later. It was T-Rex there in Oklahoma, and T-Rex was also one of just the most awesome hunts of my life. He was basically a 180 6x6 the year before. I'm sitting here looking at him, and then the next year he got these big bladed brow tines and three big drops, which is very uncharacteristic for that area. To my knowledge, there was never one like that in that particular area up north of Ponca City before then, and there hasn't been one thereafter. Ryan and I and another buddy were in on a big lease up there. And actually, Ryan still has that lease, and he's killed some nice bucks up there, 170 kind of deer, and he killed a 185 up there one year that I passed up the year before, thinking he would be 200 the next year, and he killed him the next year. And he looked just like he did the year before. But T-Rex was just an epic hunt, a deer that was living in air, a deer that I felt like I really, truly hunted the right way and outsmarted on 2 or 3 different levels. And so there again, killing those 2 deer there in a 3-year period. And then with all the attention I got from those deer, I started just getting a lot of opportunities. And I had a really, really, really good place in Illinois. I'm sitting here looking at that big typical I killed on our farm up there on a guy that I knew nearby his farm. And I believe it was right during that time also. He may have been the next one after the Kansas buck. And he is 203 typical. So with that being said, those 3 were right there in a 2 or 3 year time span. And of course I'm ruined at that point.
It's over. Yeah.
It's over for, and so then I'm just really, focused in on all over the country. And I was hunting Alberta quite a bit during that time. I went, I think, 10 straight years to Alberta, killed a couple of good ones up there. And then the area that I was hunting up there got ruined by gas and oil people. The gas and oil industry just exploded, and just hundreds of guys moved into the area, and every one of them's carrying a rifle in their truck, and they had wolves move in, and so that kind of messed that area up. And I've hunted a few different places in Saskatchewan and Alberta, but I've just now zoned in on another spot that's really, really good, and that's where I'm going this year.
Alberta's kind of an interesting one. We went up there in September. Jake got a bull elk down, and you always you hear the wise tales. It feels like, in the States, everybody's running cell cams. Very few deer anymore feel like they're unknown, even though there's some that absolutely are. But Canada is kind of that place where you just think about it, like it's so remote, it's so not populated, especially like Alberta and Saskatchewan. And I'm like, man, there's got to be some people up here that have forgot more about deer hunting than I know, And we met a kid up there that was guiding us for elk, and he was 21 years old, and he'd killed 3 200-inch deer. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the, like, because you always think about it. You're like, there's somebody up here that's got freaking 10 200s in it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
met a 21-year-old killed 3 of them.
Well, there are some people. I know a guy. I walked in his garage, so I hunted with. He's the guy I hunted with for 10 years. He knew big deer better than almost anybody I've ever known. And he had his garage. He had so many racks piled up in there. And I finally just got in there one night and just started pulling them apart and setting them out, because when you look at them in a pile, you're like, oh, yeah, it's a bunch of 160s and 170s, which is awesome. No, when you start pulling them apart, it's a bunch of 180s to 200s. And it was incredible. I mean, tell how many 190s he had in the pile, but he would be the first to say, he's like, it's just not as good now as it used to be back then. There's just more people hunting, a lot of, and unfortunately up there in that big farm country, a lot of the hunting's done out of the pickup, and so the Indians hunt more, whereas back in the day they didn't hunt as much as they do now. And so there's just a lot of deer getting shot at 3 and 4 that are 145 to 165, and they're not getting to that, and it gets so cold up there. And if you get an alfalfa field or a canola field or bales of alfalfa, or somebody spilt a ton of feed out of a feed truck or whatever, you're going to kill it. If you keep hitting it during rifle season is so long, and you get 2 feet of snow, they're going to kill it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gets pounded.
The Hunter's Advantage podcast is brought to you by Numa Outdoors. Growing up, I remember waddling around the woods looking like the Michelin Man and still freezing my butt off. But thanks to Numa Outdoors, those days are over. It's not just about staying warm. When I go out hunting, I need to know that I have gear for every single thing the woods might throw at me, whether it's heat or rain or cold. Numa Outdoors offers quality gear for every pursuit. If you're looking for quality garments backed by a lifetime warranty, make sure to go to NumaOutdoors.com and use code HA20 for 20% off at checkout. Whether we're chasing whitetails here in the South or we're headed out west to get after some bugling bulls, we trust Numa Outdoors, and we hope you will too. Yeah, you hear about those kind of, in the States, I guess it's the mountain bucks, right? Everyone's like, oh gosh, those mountains, those big mountain bucks. You go up there, it's them bush bucks. It's like, dude, there's 500,000 acres right here. There's not that many people hunting. It's like, gosh, there's some probably 8, 9, 10-year-old bucks in here that just would make you sick. That never get hunted at all.
I think there are in places, and the problem with those bush bucks are on those gigantic expansions of land is that you could literally hunt there 30 days in a row, and you might not ever see anything, and you might kill one, you might kill at 250, but who has the time? There's just not many people. I found a giant buck up there. I found one of those bush bucks. Moose hunter told me about it, and he had me all excited. I've been talking to him for 2 years, and I was planning on going up there and just sitting over a clear cut for 2 weeks in a big Millennium ladder. And the guys just went dark on me. I don't know what happened. I sent him a text yesterday. I bet I've sent him 30 texts and calls trying to reconnect with him. And he's had picture of this deer for 4 years, trail camera pictures out for moose. He had the cameras out for moose, not for deer. And he contacted me on Facebook last year, and I thought we had it all set up and had a plan. We talked about several different little strategies and different things to do, and all of a sudden he just disappeared. I mean, we had such a good rapport. I mean, I'm worried he's in a car wreck or something. You know, I can't get him to. I don't know. It's weird. So I don't know. I guess nothing's going to happen with that. But I was planning on spending 7 or 8 days at this spot that I'm going. We're getting ready to book flights for, and I was probably going to spend at least a week or 2 trying to kill that deer. And to our knowledge, nobody else knows about him or has ever hunted him. And but I don't know, something's happened.
Do you think the new world record, do you think that would come out of Canada, or you think it'd come from the States?
Oh, I think it could be easily either. It could be. I mean, I've always thought that I was destined to kill the world record typical, and I've known about 3, and I know about. Let's see, I've known about 4.
Do you have pins that you could share, or what?
Yeah, those would be worth something.
Yeah, they're all in Florida.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll go check that out.
There you go. There you go.
But 2 of them. Let's see. Let me. No, 3 of them were in Canada, and 1 of them was in the United States. And I killed a buck 2 or 3 years ago that I thought was going to be the new world record, but he deducted out. But there's been 2 bucks that's shown up there that I know about in the last 4 years that for different reasons, I had it all set up to hunt one of them. I was going to spend 30 days a season after one of them. And about 30 days before season, I was actually calling my buddy to get plane to see, where I needed to fly into and set up, what we were going to do. And it was his family property, and somebody had shot a cow off the road, and his uncle just said, "No, I'm shutting the hunting down." And we didn't get to hunt that year because of that. And it was just devastating. It would, if it would have been just a big buck, and I don't mean that in the sound the wrong way. There's not any big buck that's just a big buck.
Right.
They're all special, but for one that we were 90% sure was going to be the new world record, it was very difficult to swallow.
Did you like talk with them? Like, listen, I know the difference between a cow and a big buck. Like,
Yeah,
I will send you pictures of each.
Talked to him. I said, "Listen, tell him I will buy him a cow. I'll buy him 5 cows to replace the one he lost. I will be his scout for him." I said, "We can put a cow decoy in the edge by the fence if you want to. And if somebody comes by and shoots it, I will personally run them down and arrest them." I was like, whatever. He's like, "Man, dude, he is so freaking mad about it." And I said,
Yeah.
I told him, I said, it wasn't a hunter that even did it. It just, I guarantee you it was probably just either, I bet you it was just a couple of kids probably out riding around drinking, and they just like saw a set of eyes or just something stupid, and they shot. It didn't have anything to do. And I personally, I don't think it had anything to do with hunting, but he just chose to take it out on something, and so we didn't get to hunt that year. Supposedly, the deer was seen one time last year, but that's hard to verify. But I'm going to be in the general area in 3 weeks, so I'm going to be
go.
close.
Now we're talking.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, we just had I think we just got a couple more, and I'll let Jake kind of end it on something we
Yeah.
typically talk about. But one of the things that I think you're really, really good at and probably a master of is just this idea of one, obviously building out kind of a lead network, but that all starts with relationships, right? And there's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of ego, and a lot of this stuff. What are some things that some advice you'd leave with people for developing their own network of people? You know, it's harder and harder to get permission to get
Yeah.
access today than it's ever been, but you've been someone that's been able to consistently do it.
It all comes down to being honest, genuine, uh, persistent. A lot of it's persistence, thinking outside the box. Christmas card, uh, send them a country ham. It could be, but a lot of it is just doing what you say you'll do. Because the only way you can get a reference list is for somebody that it's worked out with. So and then the other thing I like to do is I've gone and talked to people. I've had people say, "Oh, you'll never get permission there. You'll never lease that place. You'll never buy that place." I go stand and talk to the guy. And here's another thing that I'm very, very fortunate about. There's very few things that you can bring up in just general conversation, like farming, hunting, sports, life, just that I can't have a pretty in-depth conversation with you about. Christianity, marriage, kids. There is very few topics that I can't speak to you about with experience. I can always find a topic with the person I'm talking to in about 3 minutes of conversation that I can elaborate on.
Finding some common ground.
I can find common ground. I can look and see what's sitting in their yard and their driveway and then their barn lot and know before I ever say a word to them, a lot of times, about what we're going to talk about. And when I see that person is leaning towards something, then I say, "Oh, did you hear about this? Or do you know about that? Or whatever." And you get them talking and let them talk and tell you stuff. And do you have any kids? Yeah. Where'd they go to school? What they like to do? They play sports, and just you just find ways to get people to relax. If I can get somebody just to talk to me, I can almost always get permission. Occasionally, you're gonna get the door slammed in your face, and that's just life. You just gotta. It's like if you want to go out with the hottest girl in school, you got to have the guts to go up there and ask her out. And if she says no, then what are you going to do? Okay, I may walk off this time, but I'm going to ask again next week.
Go to a new school.
Yeah. And
so follow her around.
But if I can find some common ground or something that somebody likes, I will keep, and like I said, I'll send Christmas cards, a birthday card, drop by, say, "Hey, I was just in the area." And I mean, if you can offer to help on the farm, or, if you see them putting the mailbox up, stop and help put the mailbox up. Or if you see a cow out and you go up there and tell them the cow's out, and you go down there and help them get it back in. I mean, being nice, there's nothing that replaces being nice to people in life in general. But it's the same way with that. And I mean, persistence. I had a guy tell me just here lately on the property I just got here in Tennessee, and I try not to ever cuss, but I'm going to quote him. And I sent his wife a present, which is kind of, I don't want it to sound the wrong way, but I found out she was a sports fan of a particular player, and I found something that was autographed, and I had it sent to her. Well, she lost her mind. He called me. It's the first time he's ever called me. I've been to see him several times. I've sent him texts, phone calls, nothing. He called me. He said, he didn't say, hi, this is so-and-so. No, first thing out of his mouth, he said, you're the most persistent son of a bitch I've ever known.
Hey, but at least you remember.
I knew right then I was getting permission, And so but really, and then when people find out that when people find out that you're an honorable person and you'll do what you say you'll do, then that means a lot. Because occasionally I'll get an opportunity with an outfitter, and I'll give you one example. So there was a new outfitter several years ago in an area, and he had a big buck that showed up on a lease that he had. And he was kind of perplexed as how to handle it, because he was doing a good job, at least thinking, like, what's the best business decision for this deer? It's not for him to go in and shoot it himself, because to me, if you're an outfitter and you do that, you're treading on thin ice, because most guys, if you're trying to get them as a client and they found out that you shot the biggest buck as an outfitter, they don't like it. And so we had a mutual friend who was an outfitter, and he was talking to him. He's like, man, you need to call Spook. He's like, really? He's like, yeah. He said, I will send him your number tonight, and you just at least just talk to him. Because he had a guy that had offered him 20 grand to kill the deer. Well, here's a problem with that. I know tons, and everybody thinks if you've got money, you can kill big deer. It doesn't work like that. Not free range deer. I know people that spent millions trying to kill a big deer and have never shot a deer over 160. A bunch of them. I know a lot of people that have.
That's crazy.
And so it's like I saw tons of guys who were incredible tournament archers, broadhead tournaments, just knocking it out every shot. They couldn't kill a buck to save their life. It's the same way with money. It doesn't matter how much money you got. I mean, yes, it'll help you access some places and lease a place or buy a place, but that doesn't make the deer walk by you because you spent money. You still got to do all the things that we've talked about to put yourself in a position. So when he calls me, he tells me, I said, listen, I said, I'm not gonna make you that offer. I said, here's what I'll tell you I'll do. I said, I can't tell you if I kill the deer, how many people will book a hunt. The only thing I can tell you is that within 2 weeks, everybody in the whitetail world will know where he came from. And I said, what you got to understand about people who like going out here throwing money around is that, do they have the capability to get it done when it comes down to the moment of truth? I said, because what is your deal with the person? And I'm assuming you don't get the 20 grand unless he kills it. Well, yeah. I said, okay. You just will be shooting. I mean, you just will be think that you're going to get struck by lightning. I said, plus he's going to rely on you to do everything and to dictate how the setup. I said, you don't have to do anything for me except show me where you seen him and where the trail camera pictures come from. I said, I'll do my own setup. I'll take care of everything. The only thing that I might ask you to do, the batteries run down out there and change them, or put a new card in or something like that, But I said, I'll take care of everything else. You don't have to do nothing. And I said, I will actually pay for the hunt, just like one of your hunters. I said, but I need exclusive access to this spot, to this farm. I said, I'm not willing to do it if, you're going to have 10 guys running in and out, hunting others around and whatever. I said, but if you will make this farm exclusive to me, I said, and I'll take care of everything else, I think we can get him killed. So he did it. That's the deer in velvet in Kentucky that I call Shack. I don't know if you've seen the the show or the story or not.
I think I have seen that one.
Yeah, I killed him on the second day I hunted him. I had to move my blind, and it was a very strategic, awesome, fun, exciting hunt. It was epic. Footage was incredible. He came out an hour before dark, and me and that guy have been great friends ever since. I've actually hunted with him again since then. But 2 weeks after I killed that deer, he booked for 3 years, and we've been friends ever since. And he said, the thing was, you did everything you said you would do. And we had fun. I called him as soon as I shot it. He come out there. We took pictures. I took it to their shop. 100 family members and friends came out. It's like the whole town celebrated the moment. It was everything that he had hoped that it would be, because I honored everything that we agreed to prior, And so what do you think happens after that? Then he and the other guy tell, how many hundreds of people do they tell about that? And so, opportunities will come if you're just nice and humble and do what you say you'll do, and fun to be around. And we'll go out, eat dinner together, and just, he calls me all the time, man, what do you think I should do about this? We become friends over it. It's not like I kick them to the curb after I kill the deer and go on, hey, we're buddies for life after that,
Yeah.
I like that.
That's good.
So
the thing is, I think being genuine is important. I mean, people come across can be fake sometimes, and personally, I don't think you should go up to knock on a guy's door in full camo or a dress suit, just look like a good average person. Sometimes if it's a female, I'll take my wife with me. Sometimes I used to take my wife and kids. Sometimes I take my wife and her little dog with me. Is whatever you think based on the person is you got to pull out of the hat. So.
Oh yeah, got a bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So we talked a lot about, your successes. One thing that I always like to key in on towards like the end of the episodes was, for the people just now starting to get into hunting, whether, that's little kids or maybe it's people into 30, but they're just getting into it and they watch YouTube, they get on Facebook, and all they see is just these big old gripping grins of people getting it done. Yeah. So what I like to ask the guests is, what is that one opportunity, whether that be a blown encounter or just a missed shot opportunity, that still haunts you to this day? So what's your close but no cigar?
Oh man, why you got to bring that up? So I had probably a 220 buck walk up under me several years ago. It was cold. It was like 5 below. And I had a really hard time getting my bow back. I ended up shooting the deer. He actually ran out to about 45 yards, and I made not the shot that I would have liked to have made. Of course, the conditions were like challenging, and the neighbor ended up finding the deer about a week later and won't give it back to me.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's pretty heart-wrenching. The couple of, so 2 or 3 of the stories on the potential world record deer that I have that it didn't come together are somewhat heart-wrenching. And there was a deer in Wyoming one year that I let get away. It's a long story. I won't go into it. That for sure was the Wyoming state record typical. And Wyoming's not known for big whitetails. This was in the northeast corner of Wyoming, on a place we used to hunt up there when I was young. And this deer was a 200-inch typical kind of deer.
Oh my God.
And I made a bad decision that morning. If I'd just sat where I was at, I would have killed him. It was rifle hunting, but still, you know, I mean, it was just I've always beat myself up over that really bad. Those are several of the ones that have haunted me. I mean, I had a buck. You guys would slap me over this one. I had a buck. It's late season, Ohio. I was getting a lot of pictures of him. I was picking my weather and moon days. I messed up. I went to SHOT Show, I believe it was, when I should have been home hunting. He came in a couple of times while I was at SHOT Show. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill this deer." Well, season's open like February 3rd or something in Ohio. He comes in 2 times the last 2 weeks of season, and it's so dark in the ground blind, the cameraman can't see it. I can see it. I can shoot it. I've got him at 15 yards. I can shoot him easy. It's just like chip shot. And I didn't shoot because he couldn't see him in the camera. And you know what happened? Season closed. And I swear, as sure as I'm sitting here, the next day after season, he came in 30 minutes before dark. And it's crazy. And so he was, you know, 220-ish. And so I've always, because I always said I will never let the camera dictate whether I take the shot or not. And then I sat there and did it because I was so sure that we were going to kill him that I was like, we got to get this on, you know, we got to get this on video. And I should have just shot him when I had the chance. So those are a few of the ones that stand out the most.
Would you trade your top 3 bucks for those $3 if you were to swap them out?
Well, I would definitely swap out for those 3 that were world record. One of them is the world record. I don't know if you heard my podcast probably 6 months ago with some other guys. I mean, there's a world record hanging in a guy's house, but he won't go public with it because he don't want the PR. It's not the reason he hunts. It's not the reason I hunt anywhere. But I will admit, I've never entered a deer in the books. But I would, if I kill the world record, I'm gonna have to enter him.
Yeah,
you know, but he doesn't.
That's for the deer, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't. But he doesn't want the PR, and he doesn't need the money. He loves to hunt. He doesn't want his area getting overrun with people, and so it's just hanging in his house.
That's tragic. So my last question for you: how do you want Spook Spann to be remembered in the hunting world?
In the hunting world, you know, I still want to be remembered as a good Christian husband, father who was just a good guy, you know, but that hunted hard, knew how to hunt, and you know, enjoyed the blessings that were put here for us, and I really just want to be known as a good person who, you know, tried to set a good example. I don't know how much you watch my responses to people on social media, but I don't ever, whenever somebody's trashing or hating on me, I always come back with a respectful response to, you know, try to win that person over, and you know, all the things I've been through in my life and my hunting career, I just always try to stay positive. So I just want to be remembered in a positive way as somebody that you know, grew up in an era. Really my life has all been about, in the hunting, has been about timing, because I grew up in a time, like we've already discussed, where we didn't have trail cameras and Onyx and all these different things that we have now, drones and all that. And then I've seen all this huge transition. So I've gotten to experience and really be a part of the industry over a lot of progression. And I think for those that didn't have that same progression, it's hard to be on the same level as a hunter, and I was fortunate enough, like I said, to grow up with a dad who was in the woods a lot. And so I learned a lot, whereas a lot of people don't have that opportunity either. But, I really just in life in general, I just want to be remembered as somebody who was always willing to help and help people and just be a good person, a good Christian, a good husband, a good father. And, I mean, admittingly, I guess I don't like to use the word ego, but I do like, I want to be known as one of the best hunters of all time. And not that that's what I set out to do, just because I think that that's what God has set this platform for me, And I think that this room that I sat in kind of backs that up from the standpoint of, the 200s. I'm sitting here looking at 10 or 12 200-inch mule deer. A lot of people don't even know about that, 400-inch bull elk and, 2 grand slams of sheep and, the big 5 in Africa and these different things. That's not really what I specialize in, but I love doing all of it. But, whitetails are obviously my passion. And when I look at the list of other people who have, been very, very successful hunters, and a lot of times I see these questions about, who was the greatest hunter of all time. Well, I don't really like that. It's kind of like arguing who's the greatest ball player of all time. But having the success. I mean, whitetails are what they are. They're the number one desired big game trophy in the world. They dictate 80% of the industry, and that's hard to comprehend. That the hunting industry worldwide, all the things you take into consideration, Africa, sheep hunting, elk hunting, mule deer hunting, everything that you can name, 80% of the funds generated in hunting is through whitetails.
So with awesome.
That's right. And so that's the number one. I know guys that have killed big elk, big mule deer. They live out west. They don't have a big whitetail, and it kills their soul. Well, part of it's because of where they live. They don't live in an area to take advantage of it, but they have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars coming to the Midwest and to Canada trying to kill a big one and hadn't killed a big one yet. And they've killed tons of the other stuff. And so, I just feel like that, being a really, really, really good whitetail hunter makes everything else actually really easy. I'm just going to tell you, when you become a good whitetail hunter, all this other stuff is easy.
Yeah. Well, man,
thanks for the question.
Yeah, we really appreciate you jumping on and giving us a good chunk of your day here.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. So where's the best place for people to keep up with you this season? Kind of see everything that you're up to.
So we're of course really excited. We're doing the 11th Commandment podcast now, and you can obviously see that on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. I'm really excited about that podcast. And then we've got a new website called The 11th Commandment. And then, of course, on social media, Spook Spann on Instagram and Facebook. So, just float around and we'll have stuff. We've really done a lot getting a lot of stuff put on YouTube under the 11th Commandment and the website. So a lot of my hunts over the years are on there now. We're just going to keep adding stuff to it, and hopefully I'll have a couple more big ones to add to it this year.
Heck yeah.